Hi everyone, it's Hannah from Hand Done Crochet, and today we are making my Franny Granny cardigan together in children's sizes. There is an adult version available or coming soon depending on when you're watching this. The children's version comes in sizes 0 to 6 months that you can see here all the way through to age 9 to 10. And the link in the description will show you where you can view it either on my blog or purchase an ad-free PDF. Today we're going to be making the age 1, I nearly forgot that, the age 1 to 2 size, so 1 to 2 years size. As I say, it's graded all the way up to age 10. I chose to use Hayfield Bonus DK for my cardigans. It's 100% acrylic and works really well for children's garments. And we get 306 yards or 280 meters in 100 grams. And all the details are in the description below of how much you'll need for each of the sizes. You're also going to need a 4.5mm or G+ crochet hook, or the hook that meets the gauge for the pattern. And this is one of my Sirdar hooks here. Then we'll need a pair of scissors, a needle for your ends, and 2 stitch markers. So go grab all of your kit, find the pattern and decide on which size you'd like to make, and then meet me back here and we'll get going. So before we start, I wanted to show you the beginnings of this yoke, as we call it, so the top part of the cardigan that I have made, to explain how it actually works. We are going to make this very strange shaped piece of fabric that is going to be the 2 fronts of the cardigan here, and then this will be the back of the neckline, and we'll work back and forth in rows to create this shape. And then what we will do is flip it over in half here, and then we will portion off different sections for different sizes to make the sleeves or the armholes. So the arms will then come out from here and the body will then work down in this direction. So you can see that this is quite easy to see in this bigger one here. Which I wanted to say, you don't have to add buttons if you don't want to. My son Oliver did not want buttons. Thank you very much, Mummy. I want it open. So you don't have to add the buttons if you don't want to. But yes, so once the yoke here that finishes on this blue line is done, we then work down towards the sides and we close them here in this way. It might look really complicated, but it's absolutely not. If you can work a double crochet stitch, then you are absolutely fine. You'll be able to do this no problem at all. So let's get going. So when you found the size that you would like to make in the written pattern, whether on the blog or in the PDF, you'll see that the yokes, as we call them, the top parts of the cardigan, are grouped into different sizings because some of them work in exactly the same way and some of them work very differently. So the one I'm going to show you today is the age 1 to 2 years, which works in a similar way to the 3 to 4, but very differently to some of the other sizes. But regardless of which size you're making, all the things here that I'm going to show you are completely relevant. You're going to need to know how to work a normal increase row and a shoulder increase row. They get used for all of the sizes, they just get used in a different order. So let's go ahead and start this 1 to 2 one, and I will show you what I mean. So we begin by popping a slip knot on the hook, and then for this size we are going to chain 64. So now we've got the length of chain that we need, we are going to begin to work this first row by popping into the back bump of the second chain from the hook a stacked double crochet. Now if you've never worked a stacked double crochet before, they are awesome. They keep your edges nice and straight. And so to do one, we are going to pop into that back bump of the second chain from the hook, and we're going to work a single crochet. And then into the side of that single crochet, so into this part of the stitch here, we are going to work another single crochet, and that will stack 2 single crochets on top of each other, and that will then become the height of a double crochet. And I would encourage you to use that throughout this pattern, even if you've never met it before. It's brilliant and will give everything a much cleaner, sharper look to all of the edges. Then we need to do a double crochet into the next 2 chains along, because what we need to do is create our sets of 3 double crochet that give us that classic granny stitch look. So that now gives us 3 stitches there. Then we're going to chain 1, we're going to skip the next stitch, the next chain, sorry, and then we're going to work in the next 1, 2, 3. We're going to pop a double crochet into each of those. So we have 1 and 2 and then 3, and that's our next set of 3 double crochet stitches. And so what we're now going to call these, and in the written pattern I've called these granny clusters. So every set of 3 double crochet stitches together, and then later on we also use sets of 2 double crochet stitches together, they are all clusters. So any sets of stitches that are then separated by a chain 1 become called a granny cluster within this pattern. So then we're going to carry on along this row in the same way. So we chain 1, skip 1, and then work our 3 double crochet into the next 3 chains. Chain 1, skip 1, and then work 3. So we carry on all the way to the end of the row for this. So at the end of that row, for the size that we're making, we should have 16 granny clusters and 15 chain spaces. And at this point, it's really worth checking that you've got the number that you expect to have, or that it tells you in the pattern that you should have, because everything pins itself on this stitch count. When you're sure you've got the right number, we are going to turn our work. And then row 2 for this size already has what I'm calling a shoulder increase. So we're adding stitches at lots of points now in this. We're going to add them at where the shoulders are going to be, and we're going to add them at the back as well. So this is an example that I've done already so far of this yoke. And we are increasing here at these points where the shoulder will be, but we're also increasing down here at the fronts, and we're going to increase here at the back, which is what it gives it this classic V look that is the idea behind this whole collection. So the size that you're making may not have a shoulder increase on row 2, so just watch out for that. But the principle is exactly the same. You just need to watch out for your stitch counts. So to start with, on row 2, we are going to work a stacked double crochet straight into that first stitch. So 2 single crochet on top of each other, and then another 2 double crochet. So we're going to add a granny cluster here at the beginning of the row. And then we are going to chain 1. We're going to skip this granny cluster, so the next 2 stitches of this granny cluster, and work into this chain space. And then we go 3 double crochet into that chain 1 space. We chain 1, we skip the next cluster, and then work 3 into the next space. And we need 3 of those before we get to the shoulder increase for this size. So we chain 1 again, skip the next, and then work here. And then we chain 1, we skip the next, and now we are ready for our shoulder increase. And every shoulder increase is the same for all of the sizes. So we're going to work into this chain 1 space, 2 double crochet, a chain 1, and another 2 double crochet. So each of those sets of 2 double crochet are now considered a granny cluster. So that's 1 and that's 1. So then we chain 1, we skip the next set, and then we're going to be symmetrical. So we're going to do 3 granny clusters now. So that's 1, chain 1, skip. This is number 2 of our regular granny clusters. We chain 1, we skip, and this is 3. And we chain 1. So here we then have, we've got our point here at the beginning, and then we've got 1, 2, 3 regular granny clusters, a shoulder increase here, and then another 3 granny clusters, can't say it. So at this point now, we are ready to increase at the back. So in order to do that, we are going to work into this chain 1 space, and we're going to work, oh no we're not, we're going to work a regular granny cluster, so 3 double crochet, followed by a chain 2, and then another 3 double crochet all into that same space. So from now on we're going to have a chain 2 space at the back of the cardigan, and that's where it's going to carry on working into a point. And then working chain 1, sorry, and then working along this side, we're going to match what we did on this side. So we're going to do 3 regular granny clusters. So here's 1, chain 1, here's 2, and then the next is 3, then we chain 1, and then we pop a shoulder increase into here. So if you remember, that's 2 double crochet, a chain 1, and 2 double crochet all into the same. Then we chain 1, and then we have 1, 2, and 3 spaces to pop our regular granny clusters in. Then to finish, we chain 1, we skip the next 2 stitches of this granny cluster, and then in the very last stitch of the row we are going to work 3 double crochet. So that is row 2 complete with our shoulder increases, and you see it looks very, very odd in shape. But we're ready to turn and work row 3. Now row 3 and 4 for this size are also shoulder increases, so I'm going to carry on making those. We add in at the beginning in exactly the same way, and then when we get to our current shoulder increase we work another shoulder increase in this space here, and then we also work in the chain 2 space exactly the same as we did into this space here. We work 3 double crochet, chain 2, 3 double crochet, and then that continues the point, it continues to increase here, and then we work symmetrically along. We pop another shoulder increase into where our shoulder increase is here, and then we add into the very last stitch 3 double crochet. So if you're making this size with me, carry on and work rows 3 and 4. If you're making a different size, get to the point where you need to work a regular row where in the pattern it doesn't say shoulder increase at all, and then I will meet you back here and I will show you how to do one of those rows. Here I am at the end of row 4, having turned ready to work row 5 of this size, and you can see here are the shoulder increases that I've done for the last 3 rows. You may or may not have them for the size that you're making, but you will probably by this point have encountered at least 1 shoulder increase for your size. And now I'm going to show you how to work a regular row. Now all of the sizes definitely have these as well, and they're really, really straightforward. You begin in the same way, so we're going to work a stacked double crochet and then 2 double crochet into that same stitch there. We chain 1 and we skip the rest of that granny cluster, and we work 3 double crochet into the next chain 1 space. Then we chain 1, and then we work into the next chain 1 space, and we work all the way along, and you then make sure that you pop a 3 double crochet into this shoulder space here, or I should say the chain 1 space at the shoulder increase. So it's exactly the same basically as the shoulder increase rows, but we just don't increase at the shoulders. We actually just put a regular 3 double crochet cluster in there. So here we are. we're going to chain one, and then we're going to pop 3 double crochet into that chain one space on the shoulder. And then we chain one, and then we carry on working in all these chain one spaces up until we get to the chain two space. And the chain two space gets just as we have before, 3 double crochet, chain two, 3 double crochet, all in the same place. So carry on working, and then you can pop your granny clusters in each of these chain one spaces all the way along, and then add your final granny cluster in the final stitch here. So that is all you need to know to make the whole of the yoke for whichever size that you're making. So carry on. They all have a different amount of rows for their different sizes, because obviously you need them to be either bigger or smaller. So work up until the pattern tells you move to split for sleeves section. So for the size that we're making here, the 1 to 2 yoke, that's going to be 12 rows. So I already have my 12 rows here, so I'm going to carry on with this one. So you carry on and make the size that you're making for the yoke, and then meet me back here and I'll show you how we split for the sleeves. Righty ho, so once you have got your yoke at this point that we're ready to split for the sleeves, we need to grab our stitch markers and pop them in at the correct point so that we know where to work to for the body. Now, all this information is included in the pattern, both on the blog and in the PDF, but the PDF does have extra diagrams to help you with your stitch marker placement if you think that would help. So go have a look at your size and find out where we need to be popping these stitch markers, and I'll be showing you here for this 1 to 2 size. Okay, so for our first stitch marker, we're going to count from the front of the cardigan here, and we are going to count the first 7 chain one spaces. So it tells us to skip 7 chain one spaces here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And then it tells us to put the stitch marker in the next chain one space along. But don't close your stitch marker yet, because we're going to need to use that and attach it somewhere else. And how to do that is to count the next 7 chain one spaces. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And then we're going to pop the same stitch marker in the next chain one space. So we fold over and pop and join into there. So then if we want to have a little check, we now know that we should have an equal amount of numbers. So we should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So the equal numbers are for the body. We need to have matching chain one spaces here and here, but the different sizes have different sleeve holes. So if your sleeve hole doesn't match the size of your body chain one spaces, don't worry, that's how it should be. And all of the information is in the written pattern for that. So then working from our either the front or the chain two space, seeing as it's symmetrical, we need to work 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And then we pop the stitch marker in the next one. And then to match, we then need to skip 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 and pop into the next one. And then that should leave us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Yes. So once you're happy that your stitch markers are in the right place, choose the colour of yarn that you want to do your next row, and you'll see that you'll be able to figure out which direction we're going in. So I finished off there just so that I knew that I was secure, but let's finish that stitch with the new colour that I'm using. And you can change colour absolutely anywhere you like in this pattern, and I would just make sure that you do it on the last yarn over and completion of the stitch of any row. That's how I would change it. To begin row 1 of the body then, we are going to continue increasing at the front and the back. So we're going to work a stacked double crochet and then 2 double crochet in this same stitch. And then we chain 1, we skip the rest of that granny cluster, and then we're going to work in the chain 1 spaces just as before. So granny clusters, then a chain 1 and skip the next one. And we're going to carry on working like that until we get to this chain 1 space. So we'll have one more chain 1 space before we get to the stitch marker. So carry on working to here. So I've chained one and I've got to the last chain one space before the stitch marker, and in here we are going to work a granny cluster, so 3 double crochet here. And then the important thing after this is that we don't work a chain one. What we're going to do here, it's probably easier if I twist it like that, is work a double crochet 2 together over these chain one spaces. So the 2 chain one spaces that are joined together by this stitch marker are going to have a double crochet 2 together. So we do that by beginning a double crochet in that chain one space, and then we start another double crochet in the next chain one space. We pull through all 3 then to join them together. And now there's no chain one between the 2 double crochet together and the next granny cluster, so we just skip this one here, and then we work 3 double crochet in this next chain one space. But then we're off as we were before. We chain one, we skip the next cluster, and then off we go. So continue now until you get to the chain 2 space at the back of the cardigan. And now into that chain 2 space, we do what we've always been doing. We double crochet 3 in there, and then we chain 2, and then we do another 3 double crochet. Then we chain 1. And now we're ready to work up until the next part where we're going to have a double crochet 2 together. So as we did before, you're going to work to the chain 1 space before you then have 1 left. What's the word for that? Penultimate. We're going to work to the penultimate chain 1 space before the stitch marker. So here we are, we're going to chain 1 and then work 3 double crochet into that last chain 1 space. Then we are going to double crochet 2 together over the 2 chain 1 spaces joined by this stitch marker. So we begin our first one in there, and then we begin our second one in there. Then we yarn over and pull through all 3. Then we're ready to carry on and work our granny cluster in this space. Then here we are at the end, we're going to chain 1, skip 2 of this granny cluster, and then in the last stitch we pop 3 double crochet. And that is our first row of the body complete. Now, some of the sizes, in fact 3 to 4 and 7 to 8, finish here now before we then do the flattening of the bottom and closing of the sides. But the rest of the sizes carry on with the next row, which is very similar to this one. So we are going to turn our work, and for this row we are going to be working exactly the same as we did before, and we're going to work up until the last but 1 chain 1 space before this double crochet 2 together. So we'll work up to here, then we do exactly as we did here to decrease over this section. So we work a cluster here, then we're going to work just a double crochet in here, and then we go for a granny cluster there, and then we carry on in the same way. So I will just work away up until I get to this point, and then I'll show you exactly what happens here. So here we are, we're going to, in this last chain 1 space, work 3 double crochet. Then we don't do a chain 1, and we just go straight into this double crochet 2 together, and we're going to pop a double crochet in there. And then again, no chain 1 here, we're just going to skip that cluster and then work into the next chain 1 space. And then the rest carries on. We are still increasing at the back of the cardigan, so you're going to carry on popping your 3 chain 2 and 3 in there, and then you match what we've just done along this side until we get to the end. So go for it with that, and then when you've finished that row, we are ready to close the sides and flatten the bottom. However, if you would like more length, so the whole of your cardigan to be longer, then you can carry on repeating this row that we've just worked there until it's the length that you want it to be. Bearing in mind that in the pattern, the written pattern, I have suggested adding this bottom band at the bottom, which is 1 inch long. So if you want to add the bottom band, just make sure that it's 1 inch shorter than you would ultimately like it to be. So go ahead and finish this row and however many rows you want it to be, and then meet me back here and we will flatten and close the sides. Right, so now we have done those rows and we've got to the length that we would like to be before flattening the bottom of the cardigan. We're basically going to fill in these triangles here at the bottom now, and we're going to do that one side at a time. So if you are using multiple stripes and colours here, my top tip would be to do one row of one side and then one row of the other that will be in matching colours. Only if you are not sure if you have enough yarn. So if you're working from your stash, for example, and you think, oh, I might not have enough to do that, don't commit to one whole side without knowing that you've got enough of each colour to do this side as well. If you know you've got plenty of yarn, then go for it, do one side and then follow along doing the other side. So to begin closing the bottom, we are going to be working in rows still, but we're only going to be working up until the chain 2 space at the back, and then we'll go back on ourselves and we'll fill this side in, and then we'll join our yarn again at the chain 2 space, and then we will fill in this side here. So I'm changing colour again here, and I'm going to do it on the last yarn over and completion of the last stitch of that row. Then we turn to work. Now, before we've been working a stack stitch and then 2 double crochet in the first stitch, but we're not going to do that now. We are just going to work a stacked stitch, a stacked double crochet in that first stitch. And just working that stack stitch will then mean that we start to flatten off the bottom of the cardigan. So we're going to skip the next 2 stitches, so the rest of that granny cluster, and then we are going to work as we normally have been, a granny cluster in the chain 1 spaces up until we get to where the decrease happens in the center underneath the arm. So the rest of the row is exactly the same as before. It's just the beginning and the end that is different. Now here we are at the last chain 1 space before our center, and we're going to work 3 double crochet in there just as we've done before. And then we skip the granny cluster here and work a double crochet into the double crochet. Then we skip this granny cluster and then we work our next cluster in that chain 1 space. Now we chain 1, we skip and we carry on, and we work that up until we get to the last chain 1 space here, but we're not going to be doing a chain 1 after that. So now we skip those last 3 and we're going to pop a double crochet in that chain 2 space. Now that is it. That's all we need to now keep repeating up until we start, and you'll see it decreases at the top, the bottom, and in the middle now, so it closes in quite quickly. So keep repeating that row until you have got 1, 2 and 3 double crochet, and then 1, 2, 3 and 4 granny clusters. So that's the last set of rows that we need to do are the same for all of the sizes and slightly different to what we've just worked there. So work yours until you have your 3 double crochets and then 4 granny clusters, and then I'll show you how we close for the last 2 rows. Okay, so now I'm at that point that I said about. So I have 1, 2 and 3 double crochet, and I have 1, 2, 3 and 4 granny clusters here. We're nearly done, we just have a couple more rows to go. So we're going to turn and we're going to start the same with a stacked double crochet, and then we go straight into the chain 1 space with a granny cluster. and then we're already at the decrease point, so we're going to go straight into the double crochet here in the center, and then matching on the other side we'll go into the chain one space, and then we're already at the other side and we're going to pop a double crochet into the last stitch there. So now we just have the 3 double crochet and 2 clusters now, and the last row is even quicker. We get to pop a stacked double crochet here in the first stitch. We're going to skip this cluster, pop a double crochet into the double crochet, skip the cluster, and then pop a double crochet into the last stitch. And that is that side closed. So we can break our yarn now. And then if we pull that through, we can fold this over and have a look at the bottom of our cardigan. So this is all closed in now. And what we have to now do is copy that or match that on this side if you haven't been doing the row by row, as I said earlier. So the important thing for starting this side is to check the direction of your stitches. So this is the back of our stitches, so we're going to need to be starting and working in this direction. So you'll join your yarn, it will be a green yarn for me, so I'll join the green to here in the back and the chain 2 space, and then we'll work exactly the same as we did for the other side, flattening this bottom and closing in this side. So go ahead and close both sides of your cardigan, and then meet me back here and we will put the neck band and the bottom band on the whole thing. Okay, so now I have completed and closed in both sides. I'm ready to put on the button and neck band and also the bottom band, which we do all in one big go. Now the pattern is written to put the buttonholes on the left hand side, I believe, but you can also just flip it and pop them on the right hand side, which is what I'm going to do for this version here. So to begin, we are going to join right down here at the bottom of the front. So I'm going to flip it over so you've got a nice background to see on. So to begin, we are going to join to the side of this stitch here, and we are going to chain 5, and then in the second chain from the hook, using the back bumps is how I like to do it, we're going to pop a single crochet in each. That's 2, that's 3, and then 4. So now we need to slip stitch into the side of that same stitch. So we see we have this pink row going up here. We're going to slip stitch into the side of that stitch there. Then we're going to turn and we're going to work a yarn over slip stitch in the back loop only of each of these stitches. So our yarn over slip stitch is exactly that, yarn over, and then we pop into the back loop, we yarn over and pull through, and then we carry on and pull through everything. Yarn over, pop it through, yarn over and pull through everything. Now you'll notice that I twist my hook and the work actually as I pull it through like this, because I find that so much easier then than I'll show you the other option. If you try and pull it through from the front, there's very little space and it's very difficult to get it through, whereas if you turn it and pull it through there, it's a much easier stitch to complete. So then we turn and we chain 1, and then we single crochet in the back loop only of each. Then we are going to slip stitch into 2. So along the side of each of these stitches, I would put two slip stitches in them. And then we turn, and now this is where I'm going to start putting my first buttonhole. So I'm going to yarn over slip stitch in all but one of them. I'm going to make them little buttonholes for this size. So there's one in the first stitch. I'm now going to chain 1 I'm going to skip one, and then I'm going to yarn over slip stitch in the back loop of the last two. And so that's my little buttonhole. And now you can put these buttonhole rows wherever you like. I have suggested to put them every fourth row, like that one I have done. So I did 1, 2, 3, and then on the fourth row added a buttonhole. But you can add them wherever you like. I prefer lots of buttons on although they make them harder to do up, but they do make them more secure for little ones. So so pop them wherever you would like up here, but there is a suggestion of every fourth row in the pattern. And then you carry on working but without the buttonhole, so you just do a repeat of rows 3 and 4 without the chain 1 and the space, and that then carries on all the way around the neckline. And rather than slip stitching into the sides of the stitches, we then slip stitch into individual stitches. So we would slip stitch into 1, 2, and then 1, 2, etc., etc., all the way around the neckband. And then when we get to the other front side, you're going to carry on and you're going to join here, but again without any buttonholes, because that's where your buttons will get sewn to along this side. So once you get down to this bottom end at the front, meet me back here and we'll be ready to work the bottom band together. Here we are then. I have done all of the cuff and the band all the way around, and I'm now down here. I still haven't weaved my ends in, shh, don't tell anyone. I'm now down here ready to start the bottom band, and the important thing to know for this is that we need to be here on the end, on the very end of a row of the band of the neck. Don't know how to say it. We need to have finished a yarn over slip stitch row. That's what I need to say in order to then begin our bottom band, because the bottom band is going to go a join as you go, as we've done here. But what we're going to do is we're going to chain here to begin with, and then we're going to work back into the stitches of this band and then continue along the bottom of the cardigan. So in order to do that, we are going to chain 7. But if you want yours shorter or longer, that's absolutely fine. Go for it and do as many chains as you think that you need. And then in the second chain from the hook, that back bump, we're going to pop a single crochet in each of them. The last one always hides. There we go. Oh, no, I missed. Just behind here. Finally, got it. And then what we're going to do is we are going to slip stitch into the next stitch along there. And then we are going to work back along these stitches with a yarn over slip stitch. So the stitches are exactly the same as the rib that we've just been doing all the way around. It's just slightly longer I've made than the one around the neck. And then we turn. And for our right side, we are going to chain 1 and then single crochet into their back loops. And now we've got going, we are going to slip stitch in the next 2, so that will take us to the end of the neckband stitches. And then once we have got there, we just turn and we carry on with the rib exactly as we have done it previously, with the yarn over slip stitch in the back loop only, and then a single crochet in the back loop only. And as we go round the bottom of the cardigan, we're going to be slip stitching in 2 of the stitches, just like we've done when we went up the sides here for each stitch that we have. So the first one is this green one. We're going to slip stitch 1, 2 in that green stitch to join. So you're going to work all the way along the bottom, this straight edge now along the bottom here, And then when we get to this end, if you would like to add another buttonhole here to be right down at the bottom in the bottom band, then absolutely go for it. You can space it within those 6 stitches. You can pop it on as the 5th stitch of the 6th. That's hard to say. You can put it in as the 5th stitch. So you do a chain 1, skip 1, and then go into the next one, but it's entirely up to you. You'll see where it lines up because it's on the same stitch as this 3rd one here, the 1, 2, 3rd one, and from the end. So that's something that you can do if you would like to add it, but you absolutely don't have to, of course. So go ahead and work this bottom band, and then once you've joined in and finished up here, you can break your yarn, and then we'll be ready to pop the sleeves on. Now we've completed all of our bands, we are ready to add the sleeves. If you would like to, is what I'm now going to say, because I'm going to show you how to add the sleeves to this one, but I think I've decided that I would like this one to be like a summery sleeveless vest. So I'm going to work a sleeve and then probably take them off, but the other examples that I have in the photographs you'll see with the full sleeves on both sides. So the option is yours, and you can change colour as you have in the main body for this. You can do them in a solid colour, you can do them however you like. It's really, really adaptable. And the sleeves are also very adaptable in that once we set the size for the top here, there are instructions in the pattern for how to decrease and tailor it towards the cuff. But if you wanted to leave yours a looser fit, then you don't need to decrease if you don't want to, or you can just do less decreases, you can decrease more. It's really, really straightforward once you know the basic principles of how we're going to work this sleeve. So to find the right place to begin the sleeve, we're first going to look at the direction of the stitches. Now this last row for this size has got the back of the stitches facing up at us now. So we know with working in the turned rows that we have been, we are going to need to work with the stitches facing us up in this direction. Now this might not be true for the size that you're making, so just have a check and make sure you know the direction of the stitches. But worst comes to worst, if you do it in the right, it's not going to be that noticeable if you do it in the other direction, so please don't worry too much. And what we're going to look for is the chain 1 space that doesn't have any stitches in it yet after where we split for the sleeve. So this has got the double crochet 2 together that we did for making the body, and we are going to be using these this area here, so keep that in mind. We're going to be popping our first lot of stitches into this chain 1 space here. So we begin, as we have with all of our rows and rounds, with a stacked double crochet, and then 2 more double crochet in there to make our first granny cluster. Then we're going to chain 1 and we're going to skip the next cluster, and you've probably guessed it, we're going to pop 3 double crochet in the next chain 1 space. Then we're going to carry on and we're going to repeat that. And for all of the sizes, you're going to repeat that to the last empty chain 1 space of the armhole. Now the thing I will say that I have come a cropper, as we say, in some of the other sizes, is that if your last round or row of the yoke has been a shoulder increase, so if it was this one, for example, with these 2 here, just be really careful to make sure that you put a granny cluster in there, because I have missed them on some of the samples that I made and then can work out why my numbers didn't work. It's really easy to miss that if you have a shoulder increase on your last row or round of the yoke. So just watch out. We don't need to worry about that here because this size doesn't have one. But we carry on. So now we've arrived at that last chain 1 space and we put a cluster in there. And what we have left is 3 spaces where we are going to put 3 double crochet, and they're going to become another cluster, but they're not going to be in the same space as we have done previously. So we're going to pop 1 in here, one in the double crochet 2 together from the body, and then one in here. So each of these chain 1 spaces that are joined together gets a double crochet, and then one in the center here. So here we go, we're going to begin. Check what you're doing, Hannah. I need to chain 1 first, then I need to pop a double crochet in there. I'll try my best not to say the word pop. I know I say it a lot, so I do apologize. I'll try my best. So that's the 1 double crochet in there. Then we're going to pop a double crochet, I've said it again, a double crochet in that double crochet 2 together. And then lastly, we're going to put a double crochet into this chain 1 space here that's joined together. So that now becomes a granny cluster, those 3 stitches, because then we're going to chain 1 and then we are ready to slip stitch to join into that first stitch there. So the pattern, the written pattern, will tell you exactly how many clusters and chain 1 spaces you need here for the armhole, and that is us set to go. But what we're going to be doing now, rather than turning in rows, we're turning in rounds. So as you see, I've swiveled around, so I've now come across a chain 1 space, and that's where we're going to begin and work into directly now. So round 2 is going to begin with a stacked double crochet and 2 double crochet, a chain 1, and then we skip the next granny cluster, which in this case is our 3 double crochets underneath the arm there that we did. So then we have a granny cluster in the next chain 1 space, and you probably get the idea now. We're then going to chain 1, skip the next granny cluster, etc., etc. So work all the way around here for round 2, and then you'll see in the pattern that then there are a whole load of numbers of how many rounds to do for each of the sizes. So this continues, this round that we're doing now, for a number of rounds for the size that you're making. So for me on this age 1 to 2, I believe I'm doing to round 4 on this, and then I come to, in the pattern, a decrease round. So I'll carry on and get to where my decrease round is, and you do the same, whichever size you're making, carry on until you are ready to work a decrease round, and I'll show you how we do one of those. So here I am at the end of round 4 for my size, and I'm going to slip stitch in that first stitch to join. So until this point my stitch count has remained exactly the same, but now I am ready to do my first decrease round. And the way that we do that, we are going to be decreasing over these 2 chain 1 spaces at the beginning of the round. So this is called a cluster decrease over the next 2 chain 1 spaces. And this is what that looks like. We are going to do a stacked double crochet in that first chain 1 space. Then we are going to begin a double crochet here, and then we are going to begin another one in the next chain 1 space. So essentially we are doing a double crochet 2 together. So then we yarn over and pull through all 3 there. And then we finish the cluster, the decrease cluster, by working another double crochet in that second one there. So you'll see that we've got 1 double crochet 2 together over the 2 spaces, and then another double crochet in that second one. So we still have only 3 stitches, 1, 2 and 3, and that is now a new granny cluster stitch. And this will decrease your stitch count by 1 granny cluster for each round. And then the rest of the round, and on any decrease, is exactly the same. We chain 1 and then we work a granny cluster into each of the chain 1 spaces. So then the rest of the sleeve, you are just continuing doing either regular rounds or decrease rounds. And as I say, they're spaced out evenly for all of the sizes to give a nice tapered look. You'll see from the pictures of the sweaters and cardigans and everything on my boys that they are nice comfy cuffs. But if you would like to change yours and make them wider, make them slimmer, you just go for it and change the decreases as you would like them. The other thing that you can do with sleeves like this that are working from the top down down is that you can change the length of them. So if you find that the standardized length that I've added in the pattern doesn't match up for whoever you're making them for, then you either just add more rounds or don't do as many rounds. It's entirely up to you. Or as I'm going to do with this one, when I finish showing you, is I'm going to leave them without sleeves, and it's then more of like a summer cardigan, a summer vest top. So work away for the size that you're making, make your sleeve, and then once you have finished the granny section of it, come back to me and I will show you how we put the cuff on. Once you've finished the sleeves, we are ready to add the sleeve cuffs, and these work in basically exactly the same way as we did the neck and the bottom band with the same stitches, so the single crochet and then the yarn over slip stitch in the back loop onlys. And that's not a word, Hannah, in the back loop only. And the way that we begin then to match our cuff around the neck is we're going to chain 5. But this is just a suggestion. If you want them bigger or smaller, then just chain out appropriately. And then we're going to single crochet in the back loop only, in the back bump, sorry, of each of those. And then just as we did for our previous cuffs, we're going to slip stitch into the next stitch of that round to begin with. So just one for this first one here. And then we're going to yarn over slip stitch in the back loop only of each of those 4. Then we're ready to turn. And we chain 1, we single crochet in the back loop only. And then we're ready to slip stitch in the next 2 now. So a stitch and then a chain for that one. And then we turn and we carry on just as we have been. So yarn over slip stitch in 1, 2, 3 and 4 now. And then the next row will be a single crochet in the back loop, and then we slip stitch in the next 2 stitches of the round. So if you go ahead and work that and then meet me back here and I'll show you how we join the cuff together and complete the whole thing. So now I've just got back to the very beginning of the cuff and I have slip stitched into 2. Now what I'm ready to do is twist this back on itself. It's very tricky with the little cuffs, but once you get there and in line, it's fine. And what I would make sure you do is count your stitches here. So we have 1, 2, 3 and 4. So it's very tempting to put it into the slip stitches. But what we're going to do is we're going to be slip stitching these 4 stitches to these first 4 stitches. So just nice and gently, don't fight with them, otherwise it will be a very tight seam. If you wanted to sew here you can, but I mean you're here with your hook and you've got a loop, so you may as well slip stitch. There's, oh almost, a bit too loose. There's 3 here. And then number 4 for the last one. And then you're ready to break your yarn and you can weave in your ends. So the very last job, if you would like to, is to add your buttons, and I have just simply sewn these in place using a stitch marker to tell me where they need to go. But because of the ridges, it is quite nice and easy to follow along and see where they need to be. So if you want to add your buttons now. Make sure all of those ends are weaved in, and then I would give the whole thing a nice gentle block just to tease out where these decreases are on your sleeves, and just to line up all the ribbing and the buttons and everything. But otherwise, we're all done. I really hope you've enjoyed working this little cardigan with me. As I say, there are other patterns in the collection that may or may not have launched already. So go take a look and find out what else is in the Franny Granny collection. Thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you again soon.